This is Linda Dashew. Welcome to the Dashew Offshore YouTube channel. 17 years ago, when Steve and I put this video together, we were just trying to build ourselves a good long-distance cruising yacht. We've updated the video that follows to show how the FPB concept has evolved. We will explain what Steve and I have learned about this new form of cruising and give you a quick tour through some of the other FPB models. Okay, let's get underway.
Hi, I'm Linda Dashew. For the past year, Steve and I have been hard at work on a new boat design.
We've had numerous emails and phone calls requesting information, so we've made this brief video to give you some background on the design and a feeling for where we're headed with the boat. While this new Ocean Voyager may look radically different to you, she's based on our design work of the past 25 years. So perhaps a few historical comments are in order. All of the 50-some boats we've designed and built have had the same objective: safe and comfortable long-distance voyaging. We've worked hard at maximizing hull and rig efficiency so that couples can handle these boats in heavy as well as light airs. The single most important characteristic is steering control, and these boats can be driven hard with autopilot steering in heavy winds and big seas. If they handle well in heavy weather, you know they're going to be a dream the 99% of the time the weather is moderate. The same characteristics which create efficient sailboats able to be driven at relatively high speeds with very small rigs also make for efficient powering. With small engines, all of our designs power very nicely for long distances. If we slowed down to 10 knots, Beowulf consumed just 3 gallons of fuel per hour. These sailboats have better powering characteristics than modern trawlers. Because the new design, which we've been calling an unsailboat, does not have to create stability to offset sail forces, it can be even more efficient under power and more comfortable at sea than what we've become accustomed to with our sailing designs. What we'd like to do now is to spend a few minutes going over some basic theory of naval architecture. To begin with, you can get a rough idea of hull efficiency by looking at the bow and stern waves kicked up by any hull and comparing them to similar length hulls moving at the same speed. Take a look at these sailing images first. These boats are all moving at speed-length ratios above 1.3. In other words, faster than hull speed. That might sound pretty fast compared to most designs, but it is quite normal for our boats. Study the size of the bow and stern waves. In all cases, they are very small, and the stern wave doesn't really get started until it has reached the end of the boat. Now, let's look at some stern waves from video shot on board. The first video is on a 1980 design Intermezzo 2. She's broad-reaching at about 12 knots. 12 years later, here is Sundeer. This wake is of her doing a steady 15 knots, about the same speed in relation to her waterline length as Intermezzo's 12 knots. Notice how much flatter the wake looks. This is the first time we're seeing the stern wave forming behind the boat. 8 years later, and we refine things even more. Here's Beowulf cruising along at 17 to 18 knots. Notice how much flatter this wake is than the previous boats. And look how far after the boat the stern wake starts. There is a huge difference between the three boats. Obviously, Beowulf is a much more efficient design package. Let's switch to the bow. We don't have a lot of off-the-boat sailing shots of the older designs at speed, But here are a couple of Beowulf. She's doing 14 to 15 knots in these. The bow wave is very small. In fact, except for a small pressure release, there is almost no magnitude to the wave. It is mainly just a light spray. Back on board, Intermezzo 2 again, running at a steady 12. Here's the 72-foot ketch La Cura doing 14 knots. And now Sundeer again at 15 and 16. Beowulf is averaging 17 knots at this point. Once again, the magnitude of the bow wave is getting smaller as our designs have been refined. You could consider these dolphins to be efficiency indicators. They love to ride the pressure wave ahead of the boat. The bigger the pressure wave and the slower the boat, the less work they have to do. Sundeer is pretty sleek, but she still has enough of a pressure wave that these guys need only to flick their tails occasionally. But with Beowulf, the situation is different. She's faster, has a much smaller pressure wave, and this group of visitors has to work hard to stay up with us. What Steve and I are after with our new design is to adapt the same efficiency of our sailing designs to this new Power Voyager. The lean hull shape, steering control, and soft ride of our sailboats will contribute to a significant increase in comfort and speed, not to mention security in heavy weather in the new powerboat. We've got an office full of high-speed computers and sophisticated drag and velocity prediction software, and have used these programs for years to predict how our sailing designs would respond. We've used them again for this project. But for added insurance, Oceanic Consulting in St. John's, Newfoundland has the most sophisticated tank test program in the world. It's where all the hottest raceboat designs are tested, so they have good experience with long, light canoe body type hull shapes. Here's the new boat at moderate cruising load, going 12 knots. Compare this bow wave to what you've just seen. It's a little smaller than even Beowulf, which is what we'd expect given the improvements we've made in overall efficiency. This wake is at 12 knots. Look familiar? Let's speed up to 16 knots so we have a direct comparison with Beowulf's stern wake. The tank test and that of the video shot on board Beowulf are almost identical. This is slightly cleaner, which is what we would expect to see. What we've been trying to show you is the evolution of this species. Each new series has benefited from the experience of the previous designs. And now, in the present, we've simply moved up another rung of the evolutionary ladder. We started out talking about the heavy weather aspects of the design. There are two characteristics which stand out above all others. First is steering control. Steering control determines which tactics you can use and which you can't. And in moderate conditions, steering characteristics are a chief determinant of cruising comfort. The more speed you can maintain, the less chance there is of being caught by a storm in the first place. And if you are caught, you have more heavy weather tactical options at your disposal. We know from past experience on a numbers basis and from gut instinct based on more than 250,000 miles of open ocean sailing that the new boat will be equal to or better than Beowulf in heavy weather. But in the 21st century, we've got some incredible new design tools to verify what our experience is telling us. What we've been looking at here is the hull running at 12 knots with quartering seas and significant wave heights of 8 to 10 feet. Notice the motion, or lack thereof. This is exactly what you would expect from Beowulf, broad-reaching and similar conditions. Now we're heading upwind, this time with waves of 3 to 6 feet, and the boat moving at 10 knots. There's little motion, and with our interior close to the pitch center of the boat, the motion we feel will be negligible. For a reality check, let's take a look again at that footage of Deerfoot 2 in similar conditions. Here's Sundeer on the same day in British Columbia. If you sail enough miles on these boats, after a while you become accustomed to the comfort. It becomes second nature. We know that we and our clients have become spoiled. Crossing oceans is not supposed to be this easy. There are a whole series of factors which make this possible on our sailing designs. For one, the hull shapes are balanced with heel and have favorable length to beam ratios. On the new design, we have maintained the same type of length to beam ratios, and to provide the stability of the rig, we've added active stabilizers. These are like a pair of giant spade rudders, one on each side of the boat, a pair of skegs at the stern. These protect the props from debris while cleaning up the water flow. The skegs also help with downwind control in heavy weather. Because we don't have to worry about the hull shape when heeled, we've been able to carefully carve away buoyancy that would be required in the bow and stern for stability. This makes for a knife-like bow and finer stern. When the wave reaches the stern, it will find less hull on which to exert its force.
The result is a very smooth ride.
While the emphasis of what we've been talking about is comfort in adverse conditions, the vast majority of our time at sea has been spent in very nice weather.
It is time to admit something. From as far back as we can remember, we hated powerboats. And as any proper sailor will tell you, with good reason. And then a day after New Zealand, after a robust frontal passage, when we sat in the great room looking at the squalls blowing the tops off the waves as they passed, we suddenly realized there was nothing to do. We were dry, we were comfortable, we did not have to go on deck to deal with sails, and there was no stress. Maybe this wasn't going to be so bad.
The interior layout follows the approach that has worked so well on our sailing yachts. The engine room is aft, behind a watertight bulkhead. The great room is located where motion is minimal. The galley has lots of storage and counter space, a huge fridge and freezer system, and is designed to hold me in place when we are on passage. The salon and helm station are forward. We can keep watch from the nav desk or seated feet up on one of the settees. The wraparound windows give us a good view in all directions from anywhere in the great room. I very much like the fact that the cook is not isolated and that we're together when we are on passage during meals. The master suite is next. The bunk is freestanding, which makes it a lot easier to make up. There's a dressing room adjacent with a large vanity and separate head and bathing areas. I like to take a bath in the evening, while Steve prefers a shower. The guest staterooms are aft of the great room. These each have heads en suite and are ideal as sea cabins.
Nothing surprised us more than the seagoing comfort that came along with Windhorse. In most cases on passage, there was little difference between being at sea or being at anchor. Ease of handling, comfort, and boat speed enticed us into 60,000 nautical miles of part-time cruising in 7 years. These capabilities allowed us to make spur-of-the-moment decisions. Take, for example, January in 2008. We did not yet have a plan for the summer, and idly began to speculate about the British Isles, or maybe the continent. A couple of hours with the charts, a few phone calls, and we knew that we could take in Greenland on the way. With the exception of 12 days from Southern California to Panama, all the hops would be relatively short. Deal.
Welcome to Greenland, a land of ice, rock, and friendly people. We're at 69 degrees north latitude, working our way into Jakobshavn.
The forepeak makes up the forward 16 feet of the boat. Those two large booms off the wingmasts do a number of jobs. First, at anchor, when the wind is howling, leaving them in their aft position creates a riding sail, which will reduce swinging at anchor. One or both of the booms can be swung out and used with a flopper stopper in rolly anchorages. On long passages, we'll swing the booms outboard to provide increased polar moments and slow down our rate of roll. They are also used to launch the dinghies.
Dinghies are in the critical gear category for us, and we always look to maximize flexibility in size and type. One of the biggest surprises to us with Windhorse was the amount of time we spent on the flying bridge. This area started out simple, gradually acquired more electronics, and eventually was enclosed with roll-up windows. When we decided to transition from our ultimate sailing yacht, Beowulf, to the first FPB Windhorse, it was looking ahead to maturity and the desire to keep cruising as a couple without crew that gave us the incentive to consider switching from sail. A design and build cycle, plus half a dozen cruising seasons, changes the definition of maturity. And this time, we were getting to the point where it was prudent to think about having a full-time crew member. Watching our hull interact with the ocean for 60,000 nautical miles, and our experience with the FPB 64 and 97, led to an evolution in our approach to the design trade-offs of this new generation. Out of this process came the matrix deck of the FPB 78. What you see in these photos is a result of testing full scale in the real world a variety of layouts. The matrix deck is our favorite area to hang out at sea and at anchor. Another result of this evolution was more dinghy capacity. Cochise carries a 16-foot AB rib and a 15-foot gig harbor sliding seat rowing dinghy, both of which can be easily launched or retrieved. Even a slow-moving old-timer like myself can get that dinghy into the water in 2 minutes or less. These are so easy to handle that we rarely leave them in the water, even if only for a few hours. Originally, we could rest them outboard on these davits, but now they just hang. It's simpler and lighter.
That's about it. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you out there cruising. Be sure and come by to say hi.
Whoa, hold on there. Don't touch that dial. We have a collection of our favorite cruising photos after the credits, and you might want to have a look.